Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic: resistance tactics in our data-driven society. It's all about how individuals and groups are adapting to the challenges posed by datafication and digitalization. It's like trying to navigate a maze where the walls are constantly shifting.
Oh, wow. That sounds intense. So what exactly do we mean by resistance tactics in this context? Are we talking about people just saying no to technology, or is it more nuanced than that?
Great question. It's definitely more nuanced. Resistance in this sense refers to intentional actions taken to oppose or challenge the prevailing norms and practices that come with a data-driven society. Think of it as a modern-day David versus Goliath scenario, where individuals and groups are using creative strategies to push back against the massive data giants.
Ah, I see. So it's like when people use encryption to protect their privacy, or when activists use social media to organize protests.
Exactly. Encryption is a perfect example of a defensive resistance tactic. It's like putting on a digital invisibility cloak to protect your personal information from prying eyes. And social media, well, that's a double-edged sword. It can be a powerful tool for organizing and spreading awareness, but it also poses challenges with misinformation and surveillance.
Right, right. It's like trying to use a megaphone in a crowded room where everyone else also has a megaphone. So how do people decide which tactics to use?
It often depends on the specific threat or challenge they're facing. For instance, if you're worried about surveillance, you might focus on self-defense tactics like using VPNs or encrypted messaging apps. But if you're looking to challenge broader societal issues, you might engage in advocacy or counter-imagination to shift public perception and demand change.
Counter-imagination. That sounds intriguing. Is that like imagining a different future or reality?
Exactly. It's about creating alternative narratives that challenge the dominant discourses. Think of it as painting a picture of what the world could be like if we weren't bound by current data-driven constraints. It's a way to inspire change by showing people that another way is possible.
That's really inspiring. It's like the artists and storytellers of the digital age are the new revolutionaries. But what about the risks? Are there any downsides to these resistance tactics?
Absolutely, there are risks involved. For one, there's the potential for backlash from powerful entities that feel threatened by these tactics. Plus, there's always the challenge of ensuring these efforts are sustainable and truly impactful. It's a bit like trying to keep a campfire burning in a storm. You need the right kind of fuel and protection.
Makes sense. It's like a delicate dance between pushing boundaries and staying safe. So what's next for these resistance movements? Are there new tactics on the horizon?
Definitely. As technology evolves, so do the tactics. We're seeing more emphasis on community building and education, like crypto parties where people learn about privacy practices. And with the rise of AI, there's a growing focus on understanding and challenging algorithmic biases. It's an ever-evolving landscape, much like a chess game where the pieces and rules keep changing.
Wow, it's like a never-ending quest for balance and justice in a digital world. I'm excited to see how these movements continue to grow and adapt. Thanks for shedding light on this complex topic.
To really understand how resistance tactics have evolved, we need to look back at some of the most iconic movements in history. Take Gandhi's nonviolent resistance, for instance. It was all about using peaceful means to challenge the British colonial rule in India. Imagine standing firm like a mountain, refusing to be moved by the winds of oppression.
That's such a powerful image. So Gandhi's approach was all about nonviolence, right? How did that actually work in practice?
Exactly. Gandhi believed in the power of satyagraha, which means truth force. He organized mass protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience, all without resorting to violence. It was about showing moral superiority and appealing to the conscience of the oppressor. It's like using a mirror to reflect the injustice back at those who wield power.
Wow, that's fascinating. And what about the Italian resistance movement during World War II? How did their tactics differ?
The Italian resistance was more of a guerrilla warfare approach. They used sabotage, espionage, and armed conflict to fight against the fascist regime and Nazi occupation. Picture a game of cat and mouse, where the resistance fighters were constantly on the move, using the element of surprise to their advantage.
So it's like they were the shadow warriors of their time, striking from the darkness. How do these historical tactics connect to what we're seeing today with digital resistance?
Great analogy. The common thread here is the fight against structural injustice and inequality. Whether it's colonialism, fascism, or today's data-driven surveillance, the core aim remains the same: to challenge and dismantle oppressive systems. In the digital age, this might mean hacking, leaking information, or using social media to mobilize and spread awareness.
Right, it's like the battlefield has shifted from the streets to the screens. But the spirit of resistance is still very much alive. Are there any specific examples of contemporary digital resistance that stand out to you?
Absolutely. The Snowden leaks are a prime example. By exposing the extent of government surveillance, Snowden sparked a global conversation about privacy and civil liberties. It's akin to pulling back the curtain to reveal the wizard behind the scenes, forcing the world to confront uncomfortable truths.
That's such a vivid way to put it. It's like a modern-day David taking on the Goliath of mass surveillance. So, in a way, these digital resistors are the new freedom fighters, right?
Precisely. They're using the tools of the digital age to fight for transparency and accountability. It's a testament to the enduring human spirit to resist and innovate, no matter the era or the medium.
It's inspiring to see how the legacy of past resistance movements continues to influence and shape the tactics of today. It really shows that while the methods may change, the fight for justice and equality is timeless.
As we move into the realm of datafication, it's clear that the landscape of resistance has shifted dramatically. Datafication, the process of turning various aspects of our lives into data, has introduced new challenges that were unimaginable in the past. It's like living in a house made entirely of glass, where every move is visible to those who control the data.
That sounds pretty intense. So what are some of the major concerns that have come up because of datafication?
One of the biggest concerns is biometric surveillance. We're talking about facial recognition, fingerprint scanning, and even gait analysis. It's like having a digital shadow that follows you everywhere, constantly feeding information into vast databases. This kind of surveillance can be incredibly invasive, stripping away layers of privacy we once took for granted.
Wow, it's like we're living in a sci-fi movie where Big Brother is always watching. How do people resist something that's so pervasive and integrated into our daily lives?
That's where fresh strategies come into play. People are turning to encryption, using tools like VPNs to mask their online activities. They're also employing tactics like data obfuscation, deliberately introducing noise into data streams to confuse surveillance systems. It's like throwing sand into the gears of a machine to slow it down.
That's clever. But what about the Snowden leaks? How did they change the way people perceive surveillance?
The Snowden leaks were a real game changer. By revealing the extent of the NSA's surveillance programs, Snowden pulled back the curtain on how much data was being collected without public knowledge. It was like discovering that your diary had been read by someone else all along. This revelation sparked a global debate about privacy, security, and the balance of power between citizens and the state.
I remember that. It was like a wake-up call for a lot of people who had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went. Did it lead to any significant changes in how surveillance is conducted?
It certainly prompted some changes, both in policy and in public awareness. Some governments were forced to reevaluate their surveillance practices, and tech companies began to implement stronger encryption measures. But it's an ongoing battle. The structures of surveillance are deeply entrenched, and resistance requires constant vigilance and adaptation.
It's like a never-ending chess game where every move is crucial. The stakes are so high, especially when it comes to our personal freedoms and rights.
Exactly. The impact of datafication on resistance is profound, and it challenges us to rethink how we protect our privacy and autonomy in a world where data is the new currency. It's a reminder that while technology can empower us, it can also be used to control us if we're not careful. Now that we've set the stage with the challenges of datafication, let's dive into some of the defensive resistance tactics people are using to protect themselves. It's like gearing up with armor and shields before heading into battle.
I love the imagery. So let's start with encryption and VPNs. How do they work as self-defense tactics?
Encryption is like sending a letter in a locked box that only the recipient has the key to. It scrambles your data so that even if someone intercepts it, they can't read it without the decryption key. VPNs, or virtual private networks, act like a tunnel that hides your online activities from prying eyes. It's like wearing an invisibility cloak while you browse the internet.
That's fascinating. So it's all about keeping your data safe from being intercepted or monitored. What about subversion tactics? How do they differ?
Subversion tactics are more about disrupting and confusing the systems that collect and analyze data. Data obfuscation, for example, involves deliberately adding noise to your data to make it less useful. It's like throwing a handful of glitter into a pile of sand. It makes it much harder to sift through and find anything meaningful.
That's a clever way to put it. And what about guerrilla methods like whistleblowing? How do they fit into the picture?
Whistleblowing is a bold and often risky tactic where individuals expose wrongdoing or unethical practices from within an organization. It's like sounding an alarm to alert the public about hidden dangers. Whistleblowers can shine a light on issues that would otherwise remain in the shadows, prompting accountability and change.
It's like being a modern-day hero, but with a lot of risks involved. I imagine it takes a lot of courage to come forward as a whistleblower.
Absolutely. Whistleblowers often face significant personal and professional risks, but their actions can lead to important revelations and reforms. It's a testament to the power of individual action in the face of systemic challenges.
It's inspiring to see how people are finding creative ways to resist and protect their rights. It really shows that even in a data-driven world, there's always room for innovation and courage.
Exactly. Defensive resistance tactics are all about empowering individuals to take control of their digital lives and push back against intrusive surveillance. It's a reminder that while the challenges are great, so too is the human capacity for resilience and ingenuity. Having explored defensive tactics, let's shift gears to productive resistance tactics. These are all about building knowledge and creating new narratives to challenge the status quo. Think of it as planting seeds for a future where privacy and autonomy are the norm.
That sounds promising. So, what are crypto parties and how do they fit into this picture?
Crypto parties are grassroots events where people come together to learn about privacy tools and practices. Imagine a workshop where participants get hands-on experience with encryption, secure communication, and data protection. It's like a digital self-defense class, empowering individuals with the skills they need to protect themselves online.
I love that idea. It's like a community coming together to share knowledge and support each other. What about counter-imagination? How does that work as a resistance tactic?
Counter-imagination involves creating alternative narratives that challenge the dominant discourses. It's about envisioning a world where data is used ethically and responsibly. Think of it as storytelling with a purpose, where the stories we tell can inspire change and shift public perception.
That's such a powerful concept. It's like using creativity as a tool for resistance. And what about advocacy campaigning? How does that play into productive resistance?
Advocacy campaigning is all about mobilizing people to demand better regulations and accountability from those in power. It's like rallying the troops to push for policy changes that protect privacy and civil liberties. These campaigns can take many forms, from petitions and protests to social media movements and public awareness initiatives.
It's like a call to action for everyone to get involved and make their voices heard. I imagine it can be incredibly impactful when people come together for a common cause.
Absolutely. Productive resistance tactics are about harnessing the collective power of individuals to create meaningful change. They remind us that while the challenges of datafication are significant, so too is our ability to shape the future we want to see.
It's inspiring to see how these tactics empower people to take control and advocate for a better world. It really shows that resistance isn't just about fighting back. It's also about building something new and better.
Exactly. Productive resistance is about creating a vision for the future and taking concrete steps to make it a reality. It's a testament to the power of imagination, collaboration, and determination in the face of adversity. As we delve into the role of social media and digital platforms, it's clear that they are double-edged swords in the realm of resistance. On one hand, they offer unprecedented opportunities for connection and mobilization. On the other, they can be breeding grounds for misinformation and manipulation. It's like having a powerful tool that can either build bridges or create walls.
That's such a vivid way to put it. So, how exactly do platforms like Facebook and Twitter contribute to the spread of misinformation?
These platforms thrive on engagement, and unfortunately, sensational or misleading content often garners more attention. It's like a wildfire that spreads rapidly, fueled by shares and retweets. The algorithms prioritize content that keeps users hooked, which can amplify misinformation and make it difficult for accurate information to break through the noise.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack keeps getting bigger. How do bots and algorithms factor into this equation?
Bots are automated accounts that can mimic human behavior, spreading content at a scale and speed that's impossible for individuals. They're like digital megaphones, amplifying certain messages and drowning out others. Algorithms, on the other hand, determine what content we see based on our past behavior. It's like having a personalized newsfeed that reinforces our existing beliefs, creating echo chambers that can polarize public discourse.
That's a bit unsettling. It's like we're all living in our own bubbles, unaware of the bigger picture. What can be done to address these challenges?
There is a growing call for regulation to ensure transparency and accountability in how these platforms operate. This includes measures to identify and limit the influence of bots, as well as efforts to tweak algorithms to prioritize credible information. It's like setting ground rules for a game to ensure fair play and prevent any one player from having undue influence.
That makes sense. It's like creating a level playing field where everyone has access to accurate information, but I imagine it's easier said than done, right?
Absolutely. It's a complex issue that requires collaboration between governments, tech companies, and civil society. The goal is to strike a balance between freedom of expression and the need to protect public discourse from manipulation. It's a delicate dance, but one that's crucial for the health of our digital ecosystem.
It's a reminder of how interconnected we all are in this digital age. The actions we take online can have real-world consequences, and it's up to all of us to be mindful of the information we consume and share.
Exactly. Social media and digital platforms have immense potential to drive positive change, but we must remain vigilant and proactive in addressing the challenges they pose. It's about harnessing their power for good while mitigating the risks they bring.